Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of America, a History podcast, recorded straight after our recently published episode, Who is Rosa Parks? I'm joined now by the guests from that episode, Nicholas Grant and Jeanne Theoharis, to discuss this a little bit more. Both of you, thank you so much for hanging on.
Thank you. No,
Thank you.
very happy to do it.
And firstly, thank you for joining me on the main podcast as well. Anyone that's listening to this, do check that out. Genuinely such a fascinating discussion about the life of Rosa Parks and how that sort of fits in to the broader sort of civil rights movement. I think, it's something that we touched on in the main episode, but it's so easy to just think of Rosa Parks and these other figures as, for instance, she was just a brave woman who sat on a bus and said she wouldn't move, and then all the white people were like, "Amazing, let's end racism." But there's so much more to the whole conversation than that, and I wonder if either of you could maybe expand on that a bit in terms of how we're teaching the civil rights movement and why these particular instances shouldn't necessarily be addressed in total isolation.
I was wondering if I could ask kind of a follow-up question based around that to Jean, because of all of the work that you've done, like making this in terms of public history, Jean, like in terms of the Zinn education project, the documentary, the converting the first book into a book for young adults. And then like kind of juxtaposing that with the recent comments at Trump's inauguration dinner about Musk and Trump being similar to Parks, like yeah, that you've done so much work on that has resonated with so many people, but then you still see this happening by people who you kind of expect it from, right? But how has it been doing that public engagement work and that public history work, and how rewarding has it been, I guess, is my question to kind of lead on from what Liam's saying in terms of re-educating people about the civil rights movement and translating the kind of cutting edge scholarship that you and others have been doing on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think sometimes it feels like pushing against a tidal wave. And in some ways, like the Trump Musk stuff is just horrifying. But some of the stuff that makes me even kind of maybe more upset is like, sometimes like a city will decide for her birthday that they're going to like cordon off a seat on the bus for her. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
like, who needs that? Right? Like, who asked for that? Like, if we're going to actually honor Rosa Parks, right? And Rosa Parks, to the end of her life, she dies in 2005, is like the movement's not over. The struggle continues. We have a lot more work to go. And so the ways that people honor her, that's about like just putting it in the past or fixing her on the bus when there's so many injustices that she was fighting that we still need done. So it both feels very overwhelming. And then, as you said, Nick, I feel like we're just the wraparound of the project. So just trying to intervene on many different levels. That I came first to the book in some ways very horrified by the way that she'd been trapped in the kind of young adult curriculum, and that there was no serious footnoted biography of Rosa Parks till my book came out. But so many children's books, young adult books. So for years, I really resisted doing a young adult book because I was, in some ways, I didn't want her, like, I was, in many ways, part of the point was like she was worthy of a long, serious footnoted biography. But then, right, the kind of skin in the game of, well, then what are people going to teach and needing to, and felt like I didn't have it wasn't okay just to be like, I don't like this, I don't like this, like that I needed to then do some of the work. So we did the YA, and then the amazingness of, getting the Ford Foundation to kind of fund this sort of curriculum building around both the YA and the film, and kind of getting to see and imagine, I think for Nick and I, right, like having students come to us that actually have learned this differently is sort of the dream, right? That you don't have to unlearn that you don't have to like, I don't have to teach them to like get rid of the things that they, all these like false binaries in their head, civil rights versus black power, North versus South, right? That they're coming, that the dream is that they're going to come in, right, with a more rich sense of this history. And so we can go so much farther. So the public stuff, I mean, it's both very exciting. So imagining that possibility, right, which has not really happened that much yet, but sometimes I do get students who have learned some of this, and it's like, and so imagining a generation that learns this differently is really exciting. And I do think people are extremely hungry for it. And that part of this kind of backlash, at least in the United States, against the teaching of Black history is precisely because young people are so hungry, right? It is because there's a demand, because teachers are starting to teach things differently, that we've seen in the US, particularly over the past 4 or 5 years, this book banning, but it's because there's a growing demand for it, right? And so it's sort of both the kind of best of times, worst of times feeling with that, right? Where it's like these are horrifying laws, and yet the laws are happening precisely because the demand is there.
And not to be a bit of a Debbie Downer about this, but yeah, I do wonder, like, that one of the risks nowadays with people wanting to be proactive and do their own research and really explore something like this is that there's such a proliferation of misinformation. And in an age where America is very divided, and at times these are on racial grounds, and how that ties in politically is a conversation for another day. But there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't necessarily accurate. Can that be a risk to people who do want to go out there and try and find out their own information?
I think it speaks to the importance of having things like Jeanne's work on the Zin project, like that's available, right? Like, and that's there to counter some of those myths and those narratives, or to be like reliable information that is coming from like peer-reviewed work that has been kind of debated and discussed by lots of people over time, and have that translated. I think that's really important. I don't know, I could be completely wrong, and I'm aware that I teach in a kind of medium-sized UK university with students who've chosen to come and do history and politics, so I'm in a slight bubble there as well. I think I've got a lot of students who are incredibly skeptical of things that they hear and see online, and they could just be really good at using AI, but I don't think that's the case. I think they are actually like, there's a willingness to kind of go and do research and to find out information on their own, particularly in the last like 3 or 4 years, which I hadn't seen previously. And I think they kind of realize the importance of trying to find counter narratives and to try and like find evidence. Not everyone, and I kind of said that like, but I'm teaching students who are very good at questioning things and say, hang on, that doesn't sound right. Or who kind of go off and do their own independent research and then kind of hit me with those questions, which I often don't know the answer to, but they've kind of, thought about it and they're critiquing the information that they're getting. So sorry, that's going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think, it's incumbent on like people in academia to translate research that they believe to be correct. I mean, as much as research can be correct or can be as accurate as possible, and to disseminate that into the public arena so that you can counteract that misinformation. But I do think younger people on the whole are, not everyone, and I know there's a subset who can go down rabbit holes and follow kind of myths and conspiracy theories, but there's a lot of people I think who genuinely kind of take a lot of the stuff that they see online or they see from politicians with a massive pinch of salt, and want to do their own research and want that to be good research. And that's kind of what the arts and humanities can offer, I think, in an age where it's being decimated around the world as something that has any value. But I think that's what it does offer in this age of AI and misinformation and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point there, and where budgets are being pinched around the world, and in universities everywhere. I think the value of a seminar room can't really be overstated when it comes to having these discussions and sharing these ideas. So I'm gonna leave it on that optimistic note. Nick, Jeanne, thank you so much for joining me. And Jeanne, do remind everyone where they can buy your book and get more information from you.
Again, my book, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, both the original edition and then there's also one for young adults, they're available any place you buy books. You can order them any place you buy books, including, but certainly not limited to, Amazon. And then we designed a curriculum to go with the young adult book and the film, and that can be found at Zinn, for Howard Zinn, Zinn Education Project, under the Campaigns on Top, Teaching Rosa Parks. Thank you.
Wonderful. No, thank you for joining us on this podcast. And anyone listening, if you haven't already, you can listen to the full episode right now on this feed. We'll put the link in the show notes. And if you like what you hear, you can support the show from as little as just $1. And if you can spare $3, then you get early access to all of our content as well, which will make us really, really happy. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.